You want to go to law school. You want to get your hands on a JD. Well, what are some signs that you would do well in law school? That's what I'm here to talk about. And by do well in law school, I don't just mean signs that you would get really good grades in law school. I mean signs that you would enjoy it, that you would feel good in it mentally, and that you would come out after those 3 years feeling like it was all worth it. It was a good decision. So without further ado, let's talk about some of those signs. This is, I think, the most important sign. If you are someone who likes new challenges or feels thrilled about taking on new challenges, then you might do well in law school. That's a good sign. What I mean by new challenges is, well, a lot of things. Law school brings a whole new type of writing forward, and that's legal writing, which you're going to find is a whole lot different from regular essay writing. It's entirely different from what you do in undergrad. Legal research, too, is a lot different from doing regular research like you do in undergrad. So if you can adapt to that, if you're open to adapting to it, if you open your mind to this new type of writing and you embrace that new challenge, you will do well in law school. Another part of classes that you have to deal with is the way that they're structured. And I don't mean like the amount of people in the class. I mean the way that professors often, but not always, run their classes. They're usually going to use some sort of Socratic method where they call on students without them raising their hands. This is known as cold calling. And the students have to answer the question. And if they get it wrong, there's a lot of anxiety because they feel like they could humiliate themselves in front of their classmates. And it can be an unpleasant experience for some people. But ultimately, nobody really pays attention if you bomb a cold call or you say something a little off. People will forget about it the next day. So if you can enter law school with that type of mindset that, hey, I'm entering a new challenging arena, but it's no big deal. In fact, I'll even kind of like it. That's a good sign. On top of that, you're also going to have to deal with the new challenge of the final exam being your entire grade, at least for the most part. Some classes will give you credit for participation, maybe 10, 20, 30%, 5%, but for the most part, your final exam is going to be 90 to 100% of your final grade. Now, on the bright side, that does mean that you don't have to do a bunch of busy work, so your professor is not going to say, oh, excuse me, everyone, please fill out this worksheet and turn it in by Wednesday, okay? You don't have to deal with that. You just mostly have to focus on doing the reading and getting the final exam done and getting a good grade on that. That's where most of the stress comes from, and that's why final exam period in law school seems to be more stressful than final exam period during undergrad or during high school, is because it could be make or break for some people. So if you can handle these challenges, if you can at least put forward the effort to adapt to them, and you feel like you might enjoy adapting to them because they're so different from the challenges that you faced in undergrad, that's a sign that you would do well in law school. Another good sign that you would do well in law school is actually if you like history and politics. This is not all that surprising. I mean, you can go to law school with literally any major from undergrad. Political science happens to be a really common one. So does economics, so does history. There are also a good few STEM majors. But with history and politics, it's really important in your classes, actually. Judges, after all, are kind of just political actors. A lot of the times when you read an opinion, you can kind of see how a judge's political bias is affecting the way that they write that. This becomes especially clear in cases at the Supreme Court or federal circuit court opinions, where the judges often vote just along party lines. Politics obviously plays a role in law school too, in the sense that you kind of get the opportunity to change the world when you go out into practice. Now, obviously, you're not going to change it overnight or within 20 days or something, or even a year. But when in practice areas like labor and employment law, environmental law, constitutional litigation, that being the type of stuff that gets all the way up to the Supreme Court, you really do have the opportunity to make your voice heard, make good arguments for what you believe in, and change the world. The Supreme Court decisions are really weighty. They're powerful, and lawyers actually straight up go to the Supreme Court, they argue, and they lead to decisions that change the world and change the country for generations to come. History is also really important too, because it's just constantly involved in law school, especially when you think about classes like constitutional law. That's usually like a first-year class where you read like from the founding fathers, what was going on in their minds as they were writing the Constitution, what was going on at the Constitutional Convention, What's James Madison talking about? What's Alexander Hamilton and Thomas Jefferson talking about? So if you have a knack for history, like for example, you took AP US history in high school, then law school is going to be a pretty good time for you, at least for those parts of it, because you'll be reliving the good old days of high school history class, basically. And lastly, another important sign that you would do well in law school is if you can handle the competition, or if you even like it. If you get a thrill out of competition, which itself is kind of a whole new challenge, then you'll have a fun time. It can be really stressful, especially because of the curve for grading. So only a certain number of people can get A's, A minuses, B pluses, B's, B minuses, and so on. So you're going to deal with basically a competition for spots GPA-wise, as well as competitions in the form of tryouts for law review, moot court, mock trial, sometimes clinics, other sorts of things. So if you feel like you're going to enjoy that type of thing, kind of competing with your peers, but in a friendly way, that's the thing, is you want to keep it friendly, and you want to make sure that you're never going to hold any grudges or just be contemptuous towards people. Just put a smile on your face, put your best foot forward, and enter the competition. And after the competition is done, whether you won or lost, you just know that you had a good time, that you can't always be the best at everything, but everyone's good at their own thing. And sometimes someone's bad at something. Sometimes someone's good at something. That's just the way that things work. And you kind of get a highlight of those differences in law school. So if you can adapt to the competition, if you feel like you would enjoy it, that you would get thrills with it, then law school would probably be a good idea for you. Anyhow, and one last note, if you feel like you can look at the LSAT and not feel disgusted, then that's also a good sign that law school would be for you, because the LSAT is supposedly meant to test you on how good you would do in law school, how good you would be as a lawyer. Obviously, it's not really perfect in that regard, but if you can at least look at the questions on the LSAT for the first time and just not feel repulsed by them, because they're really confusing usually for the first time, then that's definitely a really nice sign that you're going to do well in law school, that you're going to be able to understand the material, the reading a little bit more. Obviously, the LSAT is not a perfect indicator of how well you'll do in law school, but it sheds some light on some things. So anyhow, that's it for today, folks. If you like this video, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe to this channel for more. Have a great day.